When done poorly, achieving change within an organization is as hard as attempting to leap across the Grand Canyon. It can't be done. In this second video on understanding the willingness to change, I will share with you two stories, but let's start with a quick review of part one. The willingness to change curve is based on Everett Rogers' diffusion of innovation theory. We have 6 groups: innovators and early adopters, which are collectively called ambassadors, the early majority, late majority, laggards, and saboteurs. The typical stumbling block for leaders is not recognizing the huge gap in acceptance between the ambassadors and the early majority. This is a chasm that can be the size of the Grand Canyon between these two groups. In our experience, persuading the early majority needs 3 key elements. Number 1, leadership totally committed to the change. 2, champions with credibility to endorse the change. And 3rd is gaining buy-in from the early majority for the need for the change. And this is that concept of a shared purpose. Let me note, when you have these 3 elements, the idea that you can tip that organization into a new reality is very possible. And estimates are that that takes about 34% of the workforce to accomplish that. Okay, so the first story is a perfect combination of these 3 elements. I was the CEO of a startup commercial insurance brokerage operation inside my prior employer, which was a premier global financial institution. Initially, they were going to hire an experienced insurance executive to run it, but at the last minute, they chose me because I was well known inside the organization and they felt I'd be an effective advocate with my colleagues. The launch took place at an all-hands meeting of the bankers, where the group executive introduced me and endorsed the change. So there's the leadership piece. And in my speech, I championed the opportunity. I connected the opportunity to the client need and incentives for the bankers. I also had built a group of experienced insurance executives, and we traveled into all the markets. We explained the opportunity. We gave training to the bankers. We then helped them to identify the opportunities inside their portfolios, and we broadly celebrated the successes that we had. From a startup, we became the fastest growing insurance brokerage in the United States, and it was that 3 combinations that took place that made that happen. The second story I call the Mikey effect, and this comes from the old Life cereal commercial where a group of kids have this kid named Mikey try a new cereal because he doesn't like anything. But when he does, his endorsement is the tipping point for everyone else to try Life cereal. And so the situation here is I'm teaching a workshop at an electric utility conference, and we're discussing the effects of change. One of the participants shared a great story about a successful cost-cutting initiative that they had completed inside the organization. Now, when employees hear cost-cutting, they usually think job loss. And in this situation, the leadership decided that they needed broad participation in understanding the needs, so they held lunch discussions around the organization, and they sought the input from everyone. So this is that buy-in shared purpose concept. And they strategically invited one highly respected longtime employee that was known to be a skeptic, and they brought her in and asked her to work on the initiative with them. So instead of running away from criticism, they invited her input. Now, because of her strong advocacy of the cost cuts, her influence with her colleagues was credited with the speed and the success of the initiative. She was the key champion that helped tip the scales in the favor of the organization accomplishing what they wanted. Now, I have one final comment here, which is that when you're attempting to achieve change, you cannot violate this curve. In other words, no matter what the issue is, some people are going to love it, and some people are going to require more persuasion, more information in order to make the shift. But you can accelerate the speed in which the change takes place. This is all about developing a culture where people see challenges as opportunities, and you provide them with an ongoing active input into what's taking place. So with that, I'd love to hear your comments, your thoughts, and I look forward to having an engaged conversation with you on this topic.